to apologize. At certain points, my microphone cuts out, but it is audible. Enjoy the conversation with James Zimmerman. James,
Adam.
what's going on?
Not much. Welcome to Nashville.
Thank you. Or welcome back, I guess.
Welcome back,
Yes.
I should say.
You graciously brought dinner, and you want to explain what we have?
Sure. This is my standard lunch chicken salad that I eat every day on my break from work. And that's a loaf of my daily bread that goes on Twitter. Mm-hmm. That I won't nerd out too much about the ingredients, but when you mentioned yesterday that you wanted to eat tonight, I kind of had to pull a rabbit out of a hat. So I tweaked my little process. It's very nerdy, very scientific, but it looks great. It has a little semolina in it, which is mostly used for pasta, sometimes pizza, but it has a nice kind of chewy texture. It's still going to be warm because I just took it out, but there it is.
Looks delicious, actually. I don't think I've ever had anything like this. Do you want to...
Yeah, I'll cut into it.
Give it a cut. Oh, that looks good.
Crumb shot. Bread makers love that. But yeah, I'll just cut it into a few slices. I usually do it this way. There's a battle in my house over the end piece. My wife loves that.
So how long have you been making bread like this?
Like this for just a couple years. I've always been a homemaker of bread using a bread machine, but a buddy of mine during the pandemic mastered the art, and I said, hey man, can you get me up to speed on this? So I went over to his house, and cooking show style, we just practiced the bread making process at every step, you know, from the mixing to the baking to the scoring, and yeah, just kept doing it because my family likes it so much. It's a fun way to express my artistic creativity, and it's cheap, high quality food, and it makes great gifts and conversation, and it's just something beautiful.
Yeah.
And simple. And
now, my question for you, since you're into fitness and diet and stuff, how often do you have something like this? Because I'm sure carbs are a concern and stuff like that.
So I just modified the way that I eat to make sure I can eat plenty of this and not have to scant on too much other stuff. Like we just replace potatoes or rice in our family meals with this. I'll just pop a loaf and the family will just eat it all at once. And it's had zero negative effects on anybody. In fact, all the effects from the spiritual to the mental to the physical have all been positive since I started doing it. So it's just part of my life now.
That's excellent.
Yeah, fun to share it. Here's some butter, and this is some kosher salt, which I like a little pinch on there. I'm kind of a salty guy.
Man, let me take a piece.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you recommend butter?
I do.
Okay.
Just gonna scrape this off the top.
It's so funny because everything looks very simple, but it looks very good at the same time.
Yeah, I try to keep it simple when it comes to eating. That's been like a successful way of keeping myself fit into middle age. Just try to do the basics. I'm a weightlifter. I'm a yoga practitioner. Not really a runner, and then take a little bit of this kosher salt and just like sprinkle it on there.
All right. So this is the taste test.
Ready?
Yep. Absolutely horrible. I can't believe you brought this to me.
I'm out of here. It also has spelt grain in it. This is a grain I never even heard of until I started making bread. It's a distinctive kind of chewy, yet pillow soft sort of texture to it.
The butter was a good recommendation, but the bread is really delicious. I get it now.
It's hard to live without, so I just don't.
Wow. We truly just broke bread.
Literally, in the literal sense.
In the literal sense.
Yeah, thanks for letting me bring that. I love sharing them. I have a little group of Twitter followers that like every bread that I put up, and it's a nice little thing to talk about because for a long time I was using Twitter just to blow off anger and steam, and that's not very engaging or fun. So bread has been a great savior for me on Twitter.
Wow.
It's like something to talk about, something to show pretty pictures of. It translates to Twitter way better than playing a musical instrument. You know, people don't slow down for stuff that they're going to listen to. They slow down for stuff that they're going to see.
That's true, especially in a platform like Twitter. Speaking of music, for people who may not be familiar with your backstory, you had a previous career as a musician. If you want to just dive into that a little bit.
Sure. So I came to Nashville 15 years ago to be the principal clarinetist of the Nashville Symphony. That was going to be my day gig, which it was for a dozen years. It was terrific. I also do, and still do, a whole bunch of other musical things, like play recording sessions for video games and movies and Netflix shows and advertising, and I still do that, or country records, pop music, political events, anything. There's a lively recording scene. I'm still a part of that, and I teach privately to anybody from kids to adults to hobbyists, just like a coach for that. And I work in big tech from my house since the pandemic because anybody can find out by Googling me and the word fired that I got canceled in 2020. The long and short of that is I put up a fight in the midst of a woke takeover. I was perfectly willing to go down for it, but hoped I wasn't going to. And I did. And I look back at this point, this is 4 years ago now, and I'm going through a phase now where I'm just like, why was I so naive? Why did I think people were going to speak up and say the truth out loud? Because you don't see much of that, or at least during the pandemic and the years that followed, a lot of battles over the truth and postmodernism and all of that stuff that we all had to learn in the midst of all those takeovers.
Yeah, why didn't people speak up? I mean, it's almost like probably everybody felt like they had something to lose that was really important if they did speak up. That's usually what keeps people silent. It's like Americans have a certain level of comfort. Like, we have our issues for sure. There are people who are in really terrible situations. But there are a lot of people who are just comfortable, right? And they don't want to rock the boat and mess that up. And especially something like, what you're doing as a musician, there's a lot of competition. There aren't many clarinet positions that are around, right? So, it's hard for someone to be like, listen, I know if I say something, the only way I'm getting another job like this is if I move, right? So I think in that situation, it's really, really hard to stick their neck out. It's hard for people to do the right thing because they don't want to suffer the short-term loss. But I don't know. I don't know if the people who didn't speak up feel guilty for not.
I felt like for a while after I got canceled that I had a huge responsibility to put the story out there and spread it as far as I could. And again, I naively thought that somehow there would be some sort of reconciliation with the orchestra and the people who were pushing for this outcome. But it took me a while to realize that will never happen and that this got swept under the rug and my reputation took a dive that it's never coming back from. But among the people that I wanted to know what happened, I found community. Like, there were people looking for stories like this, sensing that something was really going down in the late teens, the late 20 teens. And because of X.com, you can put those stories out there and find an audience for them and find a new community and play the long game. Like you just were talking about the short-term losses that people don't want to suffer.
Right.
The long-term ones are so much more catastrophic. And I saw the writing on the wall for the future of the industry and said, I'm cool to get booted if it's going to be like this for the next 30 years. Because that's not art to me anymore. It's just politics masquerading as art.
Yeah.
And I have no desire to be part of that. I'm not a very politically literate guy. I'm an artist and a dad. You know, I don't try to engage in politics any more than I have to. But when all of this came to the workplace, you sort of do have to get up to speed, or else you're just going to get leveled by it.
Yeah, it's weird because a lot of people were forced to pay attention to politics because of 2020. Actually, in some ways, in 2016 as well. There's a lot of people who were new to politics because of Trump, whether they liked him or didn't like him. But 2020 is interesting because everything became political. It was like the perfect storm of everything that was happening, where you have an election, which our elections take fucking forever. And it's this whole big thing. So you had an election, you had a Trump re-election, right? So you want to keep Satan in office, you know, just like everybody losing their goddamn mind. Then you had COVID, and then you had George Floyd, and it was just like this powder keg of idiocy and, you know, exaggeration and craziness. And even in that, it's weird to say this, but if that didn't happen to you, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
No way.
As a matter of fact, if 2020 didn't turn out the way it happened, I wouldn't be doing any of this. I'd be sitting in my office doing IT work and minding my business. So, I don't know. I think sometimes in terrible situations, people are born from it. You know, you learn something from failure, you learn something from unfortunate outcomes. Excuse me. And I don't know. I think your story can be used as something that's beneficial for other people to learn from. That you don't let tyrants take over, and sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself to make a point. Maybe that's what, you know, somebody else who learned your story since then has kind of understood. Sometimes someone has to make a stand.
And it came back in spades from my new career in tech. It's much more stable as a father of three. It's not gratifying in the way that my old job was. I've had to learn a lot as a result of going through something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not to get all personal, or I'm very cognizant now when I talk to people about this that I feel really understand the story, like yourself. Like you've done the reading on this stuff. You are out there talking about it. There's very few people like that out there.
Right.
I'm cognizant of sometimes I do like play the world's smallest violin and feel real sad for myself. And I don't want to do that anymore because what happened to the Nashville Symphony is so much more sad, in my opinion, than what happened to me, because I'm doing better now than I ever possibly could have been on so many levels. Like, it definitely hurt and it was not fun. But like you said, out of catastrophes are born new types of people. Mm-hmm. And I have a little bit of understanding about the long game because of things that have happened to me in my life before that prepared me to stick my neck out and make a point. Like you said, sometimes you just got to take a huge blow to make a point. And there's going to be a lot of people that think you're an ass for doing that. But that's the way it has to be done sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, from my circumstance, like my company didn't go woke or anything like that. I just felt an obligation to say something. And I think the biggest thing that I learned about speaking out was that the risk of like the horror stories, like unfortunately yours is a horror story, right? But the risk of that, what happened to you as being something that happens to somebody else is actually relatively low. Mm-hmm. So I say this as somebody who wrote a book, didn't tell his employer, showed my employer after I wrote the book, was prepared for anything to happen, and they said, "Great, we support you, wonderful." Even the owner of the company was like, "I'll buy 5 copies." Okay,
Boom.
wonderful. I leave that job. I go to a different company, and eventually, I initially don't tell them anything about what I'm doing, and eventually I told them, and they said, "That's wonderful. We support you." And mind you, this is a company that has DEI. It has some of these aspects. It's not a woke company. The whole DEI thing is kind of like, at this point, it's like corporate speak. Right?
Yeah.
It's just, hey guys, we just want to be inclusive. Yeah, you should have already been inclusive. Like, but they're just saying, yeah, okay, So it's not to the nth degree. We're not getting CRT training or anything like that. But they know about what I do. They knew about what I was writing. They could easily Google me if they were that curious to find out.
Your stance is clear.
My stance is clear, and they never said anything. They supported it, and I just find that there are a lot of circumstances where I'll make it sort of political. The far left uses the horror stories to make people silent.
Definitely.
They say, "Hey, you don't want what happened to James to happen to you, so shut the hell up and play ball." And so everybody shuts up because they're thinking, "Well, James's story is happening to everybody, all over the place." And really, it's not. I think there are certain industries that it is higher in, but I don't think obviously most people aren't within those industries. So like, I knew someone who used to work at old Twitter, and she would tell me stories about how woke they are, and then her boyfriend worked at Google, and they're even worse. So that's a very particular situation, particular industry, but even more so, particular company as well. But most people obviously don't work in these fields, so they incur less of a risk. I find that most people don't care. They don't care what your politics are. Don't bring it into work. We don't want to talk about it. And that's fine if you like Trump or if you don't like Trump, whatever. Just like keep it to yourself. But
well, you live in New Jersey, which is a pretty Trump hostile part of the country. Compared to here, anyway. I mean, Tennessee's never even a battleground state. People don't even try here if they're on the left. Although that's changing.
Well, New Jersey, people will be shocked by New Jersey. We've had Republican governors.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the last election, I think it was the 2020 election. Yeah, because Trump was running again. New Jersey had a Republican legislative branch. So, the state house was Republican. I don't know. I can't remember if it's still the case. A lot of it was in reaction to COVID lockdowns. It was very clear that there was one party that wanted lockdowns to continue, and another party that didn't. And I think there were a lot of people who were fed up. Matter of fact, Phil Murphy, our governor, almost lost to a guy who didn't campaign. I never saw a commercial, never saw any. And the guy almost won. It was literally like neck and neck.
What was his name? I feel like I remember this.
It's like, it starts with a C. Cirelli or something like that. I don't remember.
But it was close, huh?
It was so close that they were saying it's coming down to the wire. Like, it was that close. And he almost lost. So New Jersey is kind of like, I know we're like geographically next to Philadelphia and next to New York City, but New Jersey has a lot of suburbs and rural areas, and those areas tend to be more Republican leaning.
That's where I grew up, in Hillsborough,
Right.
just outside Princeton. Nice place. Great place to grow up. But as a musician doing what I was doing, seeking a job in an orchestra, I had to be willing to move anywhere. And what you said before is right regarding the high competition to get into a job like that. When I auditioned for my job in 2008, 300 people had applied for one position. and it's all held behind a screen to protect candidates from age bias and gender bias, race bias, experience bias, any form of bias. And there's been a lot of conversation about meritorious hiring in orchestras, and that's kind of how the woke agenda leaked into all of the music business, was through the hiring process, which is
So wait, what was
interesting.
their argument to say that? So I guess they wanted to get rid of that screen, so to speak.
Well, yes and no. It's a whole big conversation, which I assume has changed a lot since 2020, because there's every stage of the process, from the resume screening part of the process to the blind audition part to the trial period that players get at the end of these auditions. Like, if you're playing on a stage by yourself in an empty concert hall, it's not the same thing as playing in an orchestra in front of an audience.
Right.
So we want to be able to evaluate you on that process as well, by bringing you in to play guest principal flute or principal cello for a week and play a solo and see how you play with the other musicians. But that part of the process has been considered racist and sexist now, and there's just always a huge battle. So the difference between working in the arts and working in tech is, while we still do hear a lot of that corporate DEI speak, I've yet to meet anybody who can't do their job.
Right.
You know, where I work is Salesforce. It's a competitive company. It's a huge company with 70,000 employees, and there's a lot of really competent people working there. It's scary because it's not my area of expertise. Like, I'm way better at playing musical instruments and listening to music and teaching and, you know, talking about poetry and ballet and stuff like that than I am about making tech work. It's like, it's actual work. It's hard. It's tedious and difficult, and I've had to learn how to work in the last few years. Like, go to a job that I don't like, you know, to bring home the bacon. That was the great hack of being an orchestra musician. It's like, you're never really working. It's no wonder people will stab each other in the back over getting these jobs. And it's like, whatever I have to do to have a pretend job like that,
Right.
I'll do it.
That's a good point. It's like, don't make me do a 9 to 5.
Yeah. Well, I've done worse things.
Yeah.
Then I'm treated great, and, you know, there's room to express my talent in other areas. It's not as easy, though.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that's the whole thing when it comes to what happened at the orchestra. I think is much of the communist movement is to destroy all institutions. Right, just say everything you were doing was wrong, and like I don't know, you've probably heard them say, we're going to have uncomfortable. They like using the word uncomfortable conversations, right? And they know it's uncomfortable because what they're doing is extreme, and they'll even acknowledge that this is extreme, but it needs to happen, right? And so they believe that we actually know the right way of doing things. Everything you've been doing for decades, centuries, has been absolutely wrong. So that's why they're willing to destroy everything and make it go to complete shit, because that's actually the objective.
They don't know what they're going to replace it with, but they know that what's there is bad. It's just a giant wrecking ball. And those conversations were uncomfortable, and I can see in hindsight, I really fell for it at first. I really did get my empathy hijacked. And it made it, for the first time in my life, difficult to relate to people of color. I never had a problem with that in New Jersey. But then all of a sudden, these people all come after you and say, the way you've been looking at us is totally wrong. Like, I fell for it for a minute. But then when I figured out this is all bullshit, I just went back to what I was doing before, and I don't think about it. And it's great. It's what I was doing 10 years ago. Like, not really noticing. Like, okay, this guy's black. So what? What does that really tell you?
Nothing, man. That's why there was a period of time when I started really using Twitter. And one day I realized 90% of the people I'm talking to are black. But I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just talking to them. I really liked them, like Clifton. I was talking to Clifton a lot. Barrington Martin, I was talking to him a lot. And I was just talking to all these different people, and they just happened to be black. And I wasn't even thinking about it. and I wish more people could do that and not have to think about it. I think a lot of people do, but I think there's this narrative that you need to start recognizing, and or they call it becoming race conscious.
Yeah.
And what I'm worried about is not that it will happen, but that it is happening, where the political right is definitely race conscious, or at least aspects of the political right are race conscious. So they're becoming the very thing that they were complaining about a couple years ago. You can't tell me that you're colorblind, but then say in the next breath, I'm worried about the color of the person who's flying my plane. But which one is it? Are you colorblind or are you not? So
I hesitate to think that any of this has helped at all.
yeah.
It's just so much harder now.
No, it doesn't help. Either on both sides, it doesn't help at all. You know, one side is at the core of it pushing for a communist revolution. Mm-hmm. And obviously there are people who are attached to it who are just useful idiots who think these people are liberals. They're not. Mm-hmm. So they're just going along with it. And then on the other side, they're just reacting. They're reacting. Well, they do this, so I'm going to do the opposite. They do this, I'm going to do the opposite. But then they start saying, not only am I going to do the opposite, but I'm going to do the opposite with the same tactics. Wait a minute, the tactics that you complained about that they were doing? Yeah, we're going to do that now. Wait, you said canceling people is bad. No, canceling is good when we do it. How about boycotts? No, boycotts are good when we do it, though.
Yeah.
You know, the list just keeps going on and on. And what ends up happening is everybody becomes hyper partisan. No one has principles. You know, actually, I'll even say this: the far left have principles. They're very consistent. It's the people who are reacting to them who all of a sudden want to shapeshift and become this thing that they never claimed to be in the first place, because they think that there's some war that they need to fight. When really, the trick was to get you to change your position and to lose your principles. And that's it.
You stake your principles or everything else.
Right.
You have to lose your career or your reputation or both. Or for some people, their life, I guess they're afraid of, in withholding a principle. I mean, I've gone down those rabbit holes in 2020 to sort of make sense of what had happened to the symphony and to myself. And when 2020 blew up, it was a good opportunity to feel validated in all the research I had been putting into this stuff and say, okay, this is important. It's important to teach my kids the right principles. And that's where I've been more involved ever since I left the orchestra, is in my own house.
Yeah.
Orchestra and music life in general is not that family friendly. It can involve a lot of travel. It can involve a lot of attention from outside sources from your house, which can really go to the ego. Mm-hmm. And it can involve a lot of nighttime work, which is difficult if you want to be present at home, which I always have prioritized that.
Right.
But I realized how much of my mind share was being given to reacting to all of this crazy stuff that was being foisted upon my workplace. Mm. So I feel like I lost a few years of quality parenting there as I had to deal with all this. And that's where I get dark, thinking about how angry it makes me that how much was taken from me. I mean, I never want people to think that I was some sort of innocent bystander. I was targeted because I wanted to engage with this stuff. I was reacting. I didn't realize it at the time, but everything you just said is exactly right. That I was reacting on the right to stuff from the extreme opposition. I was getting played and I didn't really know it. I'm not getting played anymore. I learned my lesson the hard way. But a lot of the stuff that you write about, not to change the subject, but about fatherlessness and generational curse breaking and stuff like that, I've become way more cognizant of that because my kids are 14, 11, and 7 now. It's this decade. I just turned 40 last year. Like, I realized, okay, I got all that out of the way, the career change stuff, the cancel stuff, it's all in the past, it's in my 30s.
Right.
This decade is the make or break decade for my kids. It involves them going to college. And so I realized I've only got so much brain power. How much of it can I devote to continuing to fight against woke DEI culture? I gave a huge amount in a very short amount of time. I made a very serious point. And to what you said before about other people hearing about the story and being galvanized, there's been huge returns behind the scenes. From anons to people in the business that are like, man, I just put my foot down at a DEI meeting and the whole thing stopped. Like, I realize you can speak out against this stuff and these people will shut down eventually.
Yeah.
At least one meeting can change. Okay, so people feel like they want to share this, and I'm like, okay, I'm glad to be hearing from these folks that are standing up because of what I did, or that's at least what they are telling me. And little community forums, and if you're serious enough about being on X.com, you can meet friends and you can find resources and connections and professional opinions. It's a really amazing website, to be honest. When we first talked a few years ago, you were the first person that hipped me to the idea that you just got to make Twitter work for you.
Yeah.
You got to figure out what you're there for, because it will just suck you into the discourse and scroll zombify you, but it can also be, if you use intention, a very powerful tool for networking and idea incubation. Like you said, talking to Clifton, he's a guy that we caught wind of each other's stories. He was fighting the vaccine battle, but we were both fighting a diversity battle, and that was a really great outgrowth of going through something public, is getting to find the people with, I hate the word like-minded. I feel like that's been drained of its meaning, but people who want to be on this journey and be on the battlefield, not the sidelines.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
So, just like you said, people reach out to you and said, you gave them a push to speak out, even if it sounds small, but it's a big thing for someone who's not used to speaking out. Oh, excuse me. It's LaCroix.
It's the qua, man. It's sip it. That's what I'm trying to. Dude, we pounded half of that. I'm leaving that with you because you're going to be here for a few days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got so much more at home, but that was good, wasn't it?
Delicious.
I'm not trying to pat my own back, but that was, I really like that combination. Semolina's a little bit of a treat. It's like, it's not the best for sandwiches, but like, if you're going to cut a bread like that when it's 1 hour out of the oven, it's still steaming, the moisture is going to escape, and it kind of like wrecks the bread in the long term. So it's just like, you got to pound it like we just did. That's the best bread can be right there, like 1 hour out of the oven. It came out great. I was happy with that. The rabbit got pulled out of the hat again, man. Had to do it.
We literally broke bread.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
I'm just getting such a kick out of the fact that we ate all that. I'm slicing it. I was like, well, I'm never going to need all this. Like, why am I doing this? But we went for it. It's good.
No, I was going to say, it seems small, but the fact that you encourage someone to do something that is outside of their character and speak up, like, you might not see it this way, but it might be a ripple effect. Because if they speak up at this one meeting, maybe the next meeting somebody else speaks up. You know, I've had people, and this is not to boast, because I still, like, it's weird hearing it, but I'm very proud of it. I've had someone specific, reach out to me and said that my book changed their life. And when someone tells you that, like, I've heard, I love your book, or I like your book, or, you know, I really like this. You made me think about this, which all great. But when someone says you changed my life, and I think to myself, what if I didn't write that? Like, what would happen to this person? And I think that's why it's important, even if it's just one person. Like, one person could have a ripple effect of positivity on a whole bunch of people, or a negative, effect on a whole bunch of people. But, I choose to have a positive effect on people, especially for someone like myself who's just a regular person. Like our first phone conversation, you're like, I like you because you're just normal.
You're a regular guy.
I'm just a regular guy. And that's literally, I try to portray that because I am that. So like when we talk about Twitter strategy, my Twitter strategy is just to be myself. I don't want to be anybody else. I don't want to be this commentator or that commentator. I don't want to be edgy just to be edgy. I just want to be me. So yeah, I'm going to say something serious when I see something. But I'm also going to make dick jokes. Because that's me. and so, I think that stuff is important. Because it shows to cross into that avenue of speaking out is not as big of a climb than people think.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to get canceled like what you went through to nudge you to do it, but you can see something's coming, and you could just say something to somebody.
Yeah.
Or speak out, at least just one time, and that can change the trajectory of somebody else's life. Who knows? So I think especially if you feel called to do something, and you felt called, you felt obligated to do something. You didn't just like, well, I guess I'm out of a job, I'm just going to go home. You felt obligated to say something because it's important to do so. Because you at least want to make one other person aware of what is happening. And if it's happening here, it might be happening in other places. So, I don't know if anybody's told you this, but like, what you did is rare, because most people just tuck and run, and they just deal with it, or they don't say anything at all. So kudos to you for actually saying something, and you got to experience the short-term pain for the long-term success and the long-term impact.
Thanks for recognizing that. And you used the word called. And you want to talk about impact. Like the impact you've been told that your book changed the trajectory of someone's life. They explicitly telling you that. Looking back in a completely different way on the events that transpired in the meltdown of the orchestra and my cancellation and the installment of a very real person with a huge career as a result of this whole thing, who arguably didn't get it on merit. The details, the minutiae are not worth talking about right now. Everything is out there and it's been exquisitely reported on. But knowing in hindsight that you did something that did move the needle, like caused a lot of lives to have a lot of impact, and a lot of it be positive, it does. Have you remember talking about savior complexes?
Yeah.
I had one of those myself because I believed that if everybody just followed me and spoke out with one voice of the truth, I thought people were going to do that. I really did. And I've had to tie that into a bigger conversation that I have with myself about narcissism and, the tendency to self-protect when you've been traumatized, and a lot of stuff that you write about, which is what I'm circling back to fatherhood again. The call to be a good father comes from inside your house every single day. And to tuck your kids in at night the way I want to tuck them in, you have to be able to look them in the eye and say, I'm an honest father. Or else, why do this at all? Like, I have 3 daughters. All of them were brought into a loving home. They have been loved from day one of their whole lives. My standards are high in this department. So if I'm explicitly told to say things out loud at work that I know are lies, how am I going to compartmentalize that and then walk into my house and be able to speak the truth. It's going to get hazy, the boundary in your mind between, oh, that's just what I say at work to make a living. I didn't want to become like a sociopath where you can, and I saw a lot of sociopathic behavior from the top to the bottom in that whole fiasco. But the feeling called is just a matter of reminding yourself, hey, I got to go home and look my wife in the eye and say, babe, I went out and did an honest man's work again today so we can still live. So in that framing, it's really easy to lose your job, because if you have to choose between your job and your ability to be a good father, then you have some priorities to evaluate. It's not a hard decision. It doesn't mean the consequences aren't hard as hell. But my kids got to see me go through something and stay devoted to them and not break. I mean, they saw my sanity and had jeopardized for a couple years. And they also saw me pull out of it and rebuild. It's a good opportunity to prove in the value of fatherhood, which is something, that's a great part of Twitter. And I love how the algorithm will show you in that group talking about the importance of being a father, showing up, and the disastrous consequences of fatherlessness is something you've really helped me understand, and how much it demands of a man to write about trauma. I tried doing it after I get canceled. It just is unimaginably hard writing about stuff like that. So kudos right back to you for putting that stuff out there. It moves the needle.
No, I appreciate you saying that. So I'll say this: it's easier for me to talk about whether it was my childhood and stuff like that, and negative things that happened, because I went through therapy, and I thought a lot about this stuff. And there are things there's an important word that I started understanding. It's acceptance, right? You just accept that this is what it is. So I accept that my father did his thing. He has an entire life. He's never going to be there, right? And I accept it. Doesn't mean that I like it, but I can't change it. Even when I was a kid, there's nothing I could have done that would have made my father be more active in my life. I accept my mom. My mom, she's a human being. She has flaws. I understand, she's been through some stuff. But I accept her. I love my mother, right? So I accept people for who they are, and I see them for who they are. And I think when you start accepting these things, you become less angry. Like when people scroll through Twitter, they get upset that the left did something crazy. And I've accepted that they do stuff that's crazy. So I'm not upset. I expect them to do something crazy, right? So I see a lot of people who've yet to accept the most obvious things are going to happen. Why are you shocked? And so that's why I make a joke when someone is I'm pulling their head out, and I make a joke instead, because I've already accepted that this is going to happen, and I'm going to joke about it because it's silly, right? And I don't think this story, on top of the other story, and the other story, that this endless feed of negative news, I don't think 90% of them are really impactful for most people's lives. If they turned off the internet, it wouldn't touch their life at all. So, I guess that's, in a long way, I'm kind of saying, I think if you accept that there are things that you can't control, there are things that you can't control, there are people who are just going to do certain things, and that's who they are, and expecting them to change, I no longer expect people to change. I believe people can change. I've changed. Anybody can change if they really want to, but to expect them to change, to expect them to be something different than they actually are, so I accept that most people are not going to stick their neck out. I accept that. And I recognize that, and so I can't get too upset because I already know what it is. But the few people who do stick their neck out, I appreciate those people. And while I wasn't in a similar circumstance as you, my job was on the line or anything like that. I got kudos for doing what I did for my job. So like, I still felt the need, and I was willing to risk. Like when I was writing the book, I was talking to my wife. Well, we were engaged at the time, and I told her like, this might be a thing that happens. Like I'm writing it during 2020 when riots and stuff are going on.
Yeah.
And I'm watching people get canceled because of COVID and not taking time. So I was like, this might be a real thing that happens, and I'm prepared for it. I'll be okay. And she's like, okay. And thankfully nothing happened. So, but I was willing to take that risk. And much like you said, you have to come home to your daughters and you think to yourself, I lied all day, and I come home and tell them you have to tell the truth. And that's why I dedicated the book to my son, because I want him to be brave enough to speak out when it's necessary. Like when you feel called to do that, do it. My goal wasn't to start a career. My goal was to write a book and vent how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And put it into words. Show my son and dedicate it to him and as a legacy piece to say, if I can do it, a guy who barely graduated high school, never went to college, didn't take any writing lessons at all, yet I wrote a book. If I can do this, you can do this, right? And you can speak out even when it's unpopular, and you can risk relationships, right? By being reasonable and truthful, honest about what's happening around you. And sometimes it means you risk stuff. You risk your job, you risk friendships, you risk all that. But I wanted to show him like it's important to do this. And I'm glad I did. I think I made some sort of impact on my son. And now he's 18, so you know he's out in the world. I told him when he was about to turn 18. Well, I've told him multiple times. When you become an adult, no one cares about you except for me. You know, your parents. Outside of that, no one cares. So get ready to be an adult. And so you know he has to adjust to that. So, but the fatherless the importance of being a father and the importance of being honest, I think that's admirable for you to recognize like that link. And you know, you can't lie all day and then come home and then tell your kids not to be liars.
Agreed. You and I completely agree on that one. And we've come to the knowledge of the importance of honesty through different paths, but that's a lot of this whole conversation going back to the beginning of the Trump era is about learning to speak across the aisle, like trying to get across the barriers, the race barriers, the gender barriers, like all those movements, Me Too, and then the woke movement, and then the trans movement. All of it is like just trying to destroy barriers at first, but it destroys everything in the process. And I think acceptance, as you said, is a big part of it, just accepting this stuff is here to stay for a long time. Like the only way to win this country back is to raise another generation of people. I'm convinced that, and that's always been true. But, you know, my parents are boomers, and my parents grew up in great circumstances, so do I, and I'm convinced that it's just spreading the genetics in the purest form is the best chance we have. So being serious about it is easier when I'm in tech, so I'm very grateful for that part of the outcome. Fortune has smiled upon me as a result of karma, fortune, blessings, whatever language you want to put it in. I believe that I was called to stand up and say something. Like, I'm comfortable saying that now. Like, it welled up from inside me like a beam of light, seeing this whole thing fall apart and being like, no, you can't just say nothing right here. You can't look the other way. You're going to be judged after this life if you do. Right. You'll never sleep again. Like, I have a conscience. What a great thing to figure out. My conscience is usually right. Like, it's not that I didn't falter along the way and act naively, as you said, or as I said, but I'm a bold game player. Like, I staked my whole college education on a job that I knew I was going to be up against 300 people for one job, like, every time. Like, the odds suck, man. You need luck, you need privilege, you need education, you need money, you need people to believe in you all the way from the beginning to the end. It's like being a professional athlete.
Yeah.
And I've had to accept, yeah, like, when I play now, it's so much harder because I'm not playing games all the time. I'm like the old retired basketball player who, like, feels creaky at the gym. Like, when I have a session, I got to practice, and it's different. And, I'm sad that my beautiful sound inside the Schermerhorn Symphony Center has been eliminated from the world. That's a $150 million concert hall that we could walk to right down the street over there. I catered my whole playing and sound and aesthetic approach to that building. And that's just gone. And I had to accept it. Okay, that's the price of my integrity, is never hearing my sound zing around that 30,000 square foot concert hall ever again. It sucks, man. It still burns me. It still burns, for sure. It's a wound. But I feel like I gave it all I had. And now I know a little bit more about myself that really surprised me. One thing about 2020 that I saw was a lot of people saying, I wonder if I ever saw a black person getting oppressed, if I ever would say anything, if I would ever speak up. You hear these people at church down here in the South. I just don't know if I'd have the courage to do it. And I'm like, I don't have to wonder that. I have that courage. And given the moment to take a bullet for a black guy, metaphorically speaking, obviously, I did it. And that makes me realize I have a serious claim against being an oppressor that I can take with me forever. Like, if anybody ever says, hey, man, did you ever speak up on a black guy's behalf? It's like, as a matter of fact, yes. Because I believe in meritocracy, and this guy was super talented and a little deranged, but I believe in fairness above all else. I do have principles. Like, I had to lose my career to realize, yeah, I really do have principles, at least. But life is long, man. If you can keep those intact, if you know what your principles are and you can dedicate yourself to living to them, it's like Jordan Peterson has said, if you want to have an adventure, tell the truth right where you are. Like, just stand there and tell the truth. Like, that is life's great adventure. So I recommend it, honestly, for people. Get in the game. It's not that hard. It's like you said, you just take it in stages. If you can do it, your son can do it. Like, there's a certain amount of attitude and zeal that you have to discover inside yourself if you're going to get in the game. And you get knocked out, you might get injured, but I'm fired up about it talking to you. Like, it reminds me, because I try not to think about this that much, but every once in a while I do remember, like, yeah, that was a cool moment in my life, taking a stand over something. Like, getting knocked down and getting back up. Like, I'm a Northeastern guy. My dad's from Philly. I'm half Italian. I recognize Rocky Balboa as the guy who just, like, can take a beating and get back up. That's one of the great art pieces in American history. I know I'm rambling about that, but that's what I was raised on, is that kind of Northeastern mentality that we can all just get along and fight the good fight of living. That sounds so corny, but like this.
I know what you mean, though.
I like to have an adventure whenever possible.
No, it's not corny at all. Like, I think, so I have a whole bunch of, like, theories and phrases. I think you really get to see people in crisis, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the real person. When it's comfortable, like, I'll say this, I'm a Christian, but it's easy to be a Christian in America.
Totally.
Now, can you imagine how hard it is to be a Christian in, right now, Nigeria, where they're slaughtering Christians? Like, that's hard. That's some hard stuff. So I recognize, like, there's certain things that you can proclaim in certain places, and it's, all right, great, you're a Christian in America. But, like, what happens in those moments of, like, sheer terror? would I be strong enough in my faith to look some jihadist in the face who's trying to convert me to Islam and say, no, I'm a Christian, so you either kill me or let me go? Like, would I be that strong? So it's hard. It's hard for me to say that. I want to say that. I would look him in the face and be like, I'm a Christian. But how pragmatic am I? It's like, you can tell him that and just he'll leave you alone.
Yeah.
But then, am I being truthful? Right? Am I just lying? And does that go against my principles? So, but I'm giving like a very extreme case. But I think something that's more relatable is COVID. COVID put a lot of panic into people's hearts and made them become what I think was always in them. Some people have said my assessment is a little bit unfair. They might be right, I don't know. But I saw a lot of tyrants pop out. So even just outside the woke stuff, I saw a lot of tyrants. And I said, hold on a second. Where do all these people come from? Like the ones, and there are a multitude of videos of the person who's chasing down the person who doesn't have the mask on.
Oh, yeah.
Face, right? These are people who should never have power because they would abuse the shit out of it. And we gave them social power to feel, not only feel like they should do it, but that they could record it, right?
Yeah.
And look what I just did, right? Anybody else who walks around and doesn't have a mask on their face, you've been warned because I'm going to tell on you. Like the people in Los Angeles who were snitching on other families for having family.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like
It's so nuts.
It's so nuts. But it just made me realize we all have a little bit of tyranny in us, right? Or a lot, I don't want to say we all. A lot of us have a little bit of tyranny in us. But I think that's when we got to see a lot of people for what they are. In your circumstance, when put into that moment of crisis, you showed what you are. You showed that I am someone who is principled, and I'm willing to do these things to show that, and I'm not willing to lie. And I think it's very difficult for a lot of people to do that when something is on the line. So we got to see who you are. So, and not only that, but your children got to see who you are, your wife got to see who you are, and I think all that stuff is really, really important. I think legacy is a word that a lot of people don't say these days, because we don't talk about family as much as we should. But that was something, as a child who grew up without his father, it wasn't until my mid-30s? Yeah, almost it was my mid-30s that I started thinking about legacy. And I was like, my son is a teenager, and I'm like, quite literally, I was on a train in Germany. I think I was on my way to Munich. And I planned, like, I'm going to go on the train. I was taking multiple trains. I'm going to go on the train, and I'm just going to think. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to think. So I was just thinking. I was thinking about my life, everything that I did, haven't done. What do I want to do? What's my purpose? I was thinking about all this stuff, and I figured it out. And on the train, my purpose is to help as many people as I possibly can. The thing that has always made me feel good in all my jobs, which have always been customer service related, has been helping people. So whether it's over the phone tech support, and I sit there for an hour to help an old lady program her remote, but she got it. And she hung in there with me, and she got it, and she was, in the very beginning, she's like, I can't do this. I don't believe in myself to do it. And I encouraged her for an hour to do it, and she got it. And we celebrated together. Like, I love those moments. that's, to me, that's like an example of service. So I want to serve. And the other thing was to leave a legacy behind for um, something that my son could be proud of. So that's why I kind of came up with a book, and I thought about it, and I remember I was going to write a book about like questioning things, but I had no idea what to write about. So the book was always like in the back of my head. I didn't have a topic to write about until George Floyd and all the craziness happened. But legacy, I think, is extremely important. And what you're doing, especially because you're focusing on building a relationship with your family and being an example, a role model for your kids, and even for your daughters, when they search for a husband in the future, they're going to model that person after you, right? So they know what a proper man looks like and what a shit guy looks like. And they said, my dad wouldn't do that, so I know that's a shit guy, right? So you're impacting them in so many different ways that maybe they're not even realizing. Likely they don't even realize right now. They're just too young. But you're impacting them. You're leaving a legacy behind, and that legacy continues and it continues and continues. So I think it's important that we all think about like what kind of impact that we're having on other people's lives. Are we doing something that's positive? Are we doing something that's negative? That's what pisses me off when I see someone who has so much influence, so much power, and they choose to be negative. They choose to be a loudmouth, right? Not going to name any names because then it becomes about the person. But there's somebody who has a massive platform on the conservative side, massive platform. They're not the brightest person in the world, right? They're just extremely confident, and they choose to 95% of the time be an asshole. And they choose to antagonize. They choose to do these things. Why? Because it gets them more attention, and it gets clicks, and they get rage bait. But then they complain that they have to have security, and they get death threats and stuff like that. Well, it's because that's the energy that you're putting out. You have the power to do something positive. You use your power in a reckless manner. You choose to act like an asshole, even with people who might agree with you, just they don't like your approach. And you'll wag your finger at them with disdain and have confidence that you're 100% right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, regarding what you said about legacy, that's something I think about a lot because I don't have any sons. So the Zimmerman name ends with me. And so now that I'm in my 40s and my kids are getting older and they're going to start dating soon, sooner than later, I can see it coming very close. And they're going to be modeling their idea of what a man is after me in some very fundamental way because I'm their father. It's dawned on me that I don't have to raise any men, but I do have to be one. Like it's a very different thing, being a man versus raising a man, because there's many success stories out there where the guy who didn't have a good father ends up being a really good father. Right. This is what I can be a really good man, figure out what that is, just to be a model for my kids. Projecting an image of masculinity to my kids, it's like, truthfully. Honestly, a lot of the answer to this stuff is spending more time in rooms with just men. It's not it's like, hey, I need some guy time. I just need to go sharpen the blade with some other men, like iron sharpens iron. Men battle test their ideas. Men, like just a couple nights ago, for example, there's the Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin interview, which I caught just snippets of because it's such a monumental occurrence. But the way that people like that talk, and like men like of that type of, I mean, I'm drifting into something and I don't really know what I'm talking about, but there's some stuff that I like to shield from my wife and kids, let's say.
Yeah.
Like parts of myself that I've found way more success as my kids age and I age, and just not reserving certain topics for men, but just learning to soften my voice in my house. It's had such a huge impact as I've, again, come back to the legacy. It's all about that, realizing where I came from and what I want my kids to be looking for, and realizing that you can instill values in your kids if you try to. Like, you just, it's not hard to do if you're doing it the traditional way, the trad fam way, or whatever they say online. Just basically like stay married, have kids in the bonds of marriage whenever possible. That's the best way. If you say you're Christian, I too am a Christian, a practicing Christian for my entire adult life. So also the most impact you're ever going to have. While everything that you said is true, and you and I both have tried to make our contributions public and far-reaching through our words and actions and projects and whatever we're doing and will still do, you will never be able to impact anybody as hard as your own children. Because ideally speaking.
No, you're absolutely right. That's why, like, when I understand it, like when you see people go to like school boards and stuff like that, not criticizing them. That's one aspect, right? You want to go to your legislator about changing whatever. That's one aspect. But if you want to protect your children, if the focus is protecting children, it's got to start from home.
Definitely.
And so, like, for my son, I started showing him these videos of, like, Ben Shapiro going to a college.
Uh-huh.
And talking to these woke college kids. And as my son's not indoctrinated, he can watch it from a very rational standpoint and just saying, like, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Right? That girl just said this. Does that make any sense? And we would talk about it. And then, he would come up to his own conclusions. I don't spoon feed my son ideas. I just show him stuff, just like I do with everybody else. I'm just showing you stuff. You can consider it or not consider it. That's up to you. But if it makes sense, then it makes sense. So my son is actually way more, in my opinion, I think he's way more rational and calmer than I am. So I'm not worried about him at all in any environment. But I wanted to show him this stuff so he understands what's out there. And I think that there are a lot of parents, especially in 2020, and this is not criticizing them. I get it. You just had no idea, just like a lot of people. There were a lot of parents who were ill-prepared for what was going on in schools.
Yeah.
What was always there, just kind of undercover. They were just completely ill-prepared for it. And they didn't have an opportunity to educate their kids, to watch out for these things, right? So it was a little bit too late. Well, now we know. We know what's out there. And so it's your obligation as a parent to talk to them, to say, if your teacher starts saying crazy shit like this, tell me. And I've had that conversation with my son, and he's told me. He's told me about some non-profit organization coming to a school asking the kids what pronouns they are, and what orientation they are, and I'm just like, why? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
And how come the parents weren't notified? And it was all these different things that are happening on top of him just going to a shitty school that we pulled him out of school. We just did homeschooling. But I made him aware like of this type of stuff. So now it's like a red alarm,
Yeah.
red alert kind of thing goes off in his head when he starts hearing someone using critical theory wrapped up into something else. Like, that sounds weird. Who says that? It's like when leftists say like black bodies. It's like, who talks like that? It sounds so weird.
We mock it a lot at my house. It's a really effective way to do it. Like one of my kids, my kids really are into dolls. My younger ones especially. Our generation dolls. It's like they're from Target. They're spectacular. Great details. They have all kinds of accessories and stuff. A few of the dolls are boys, and they dressed a couple of them up like girls as part of a little stunt they were pulling, and they come up with scenes and all this stuff. So the boys were wearing girls' clothing. So I was like, kids, does this mean you're trans? You're dressing up your dolls. Are you trying to tell me something? And they're like, Dad, stop! And it's like, I have made the issues so preposterous and use humor in a way that has really, it's gotten deep into their psyche. They have to learn to, not take all this stuff so seriously, because it's not serious.
Right.
It's all just a giant scam. It's all just a giant Marxist scam. Like,
Yeah.
if you do the reading, you're going for it.
I'm going.
I was thinking about it too. It's just part of the best way to inoculate your kids against it is with humor. Nice,
Yeah.
dude.
A healthy amount of mocking is not a bad thing at all.
Definitely not.
And I think that's what my son and I have done. We mock it whenever the case should come up. My son, his mother is white, so he's mixed. And he'll say something, and I'm like, that's pretty racist. And he's like, what are you talking about? He'll be like, can you, do I have a black pen? A black pen? Racist.
Yeah.
Just some stuff like that. And we'll laugh about it because it's stupid. Saying that half of him is racist. But it's silly stuff that shouldn't be taken serious. Which is sad because there's so many serious people who take it seriously.
I know.
That's politically speaking, that's one of the reasons why I was, amongst other reasons, why I was done with the Democrats. And I said, I can't associate with these people, at least not right now. Is that they took all this stuff seriously. They're like, you know what? Like when Joe Biden is sitting there saying gender affirming care, Joe Biden doesn't know what the fuck that means.
It's so wild. They'll say anything.
Wild. He'll just say it. And that's where all of them started. They just started using their language. That's why I don't know if you're like this, where you can tell. I can tell a true believer, and I can tell someone who's just using the language.
Yeah.
Right? And they're just using the language. The true believers, they're scary people. They're scary people because they really believe this stuff, and it's weird.
It took me a while. It took me a while to realize that some people are true believers. I thought everyone was just cynically using it to get ahead, just playing the black card, as it were. But some people are really convinced that they're in danger and their black bodies are going to get broken by all this. And it's like, wow, you have the language battle. You can't sit on the sidelines for that. You have to be able to assert the truth through language, and that's where all this stuff boils down in lawfare and politics and HR meetings. It's all about the language. DEI is a language game. I'm really happy with how this bread came out. This is I bulk fermented it overnight. This is super weird, but it has to sit and proof for a long time to just really gas up. That's where all the magic happens, is during the rising process. So like last night, I put it out and I said to the bread, just wake me up when you need me to tuck you in and put you in the refrigerator. And 3:45, I woke up and it was like perfect. It sounds crazy and a little bit out there, but it's a spiritual venture, bread. You think if you're a Christian of all the symbolism, all the miracles involving bread and the metaphors, that's what I meditate on when I do this. a tribute in a way to that. And just the process of breaking bread. Whether you're religious or not, we all as human beings understand what people mean by let's break bread together. It's not literal. It's the process of ceremony and tradition and all that. And so this method that I used, I'm really happy with how it came out. Like, my bread doesn't always taste exactly like this. It's holding its moisture better than I thought. And I used half as much levain, the rising agent, because I wanted it to go slow, because I wanted it to go overnight and just kind of like chill, like not be too active. And it's different. Every loaf is special. And it's been raining like crazy, so it's like nice and moist. Yeah, you came down to Nashville in a not so nice weather situation.
Yeah. And I know Nashville's record of having shitty drivers, so I was a little bit worried.
Well, you know how to drive. You're from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Like, we understand how it works. That's, you know, people love to complain locally all over the place about, oh, the drivers here suck. And I was like, the drivers suck everywhere except New Jersey.
The worst, the absolute worst, and I say this, and my wife is from New York, but New Yorkers are the absolute worst.
That's a war zone, driving in the city.
Especially in Manhattan. I was just like, oh, there's just no traffic laws in Manhattan. I've just kind of come to the conclusion that people just do whatever they want in the car in Manhattan. It's like, oh, they're just driving on the opposite side of the street? Oh, okay. All right. You know, they just cut in and out, just drive on all sides of the roads.
You know, before I was a musician, I was a Broadway actor. When I was a child, 9 and 10 years old, for a year I was in a Broadway show in Times Square. So my mom would drive me in after school, and the show was called The Will Rogers Follies. It was at the Palace Theater on 47th Street. And during that show, I was around Trump all the time because his girlfriend, Marla Maples, was in the show. So he would always come out and hang out backstage.
Oh, wow.
So I got this sneak peek into what he's like and what his shtick is. It's never changed. It's never going to change. So when he entered the scene, I was just like, I felt like I had such a great advantage. Like, I know what he is, and how he can be effective, and it's wild seeing all this stuff. Not to get all back into politics, but I'm watching from afar as 24 starts, thinking, wow, these two old guys are really going to go at it again?
Yes. It's the battle over which is the best of the worst choices.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Why does it always have to be like this?
Wow. That's a whole.
That's a whole nother.
But I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Since you got to see Trump behind the scenes, is Trump the same behind the scenes as in the public eye?
It's all about his energy. How he acts in a room full of people. Like, he has supernatural social powers. It's just a force of nature. And you could feel him come into the room. I was 9 years old. I just knew him because he's famous. He's famous in New York for just being a rich guy. And it's pretty magnetic. So it's that simple. It's very politically useful because he has savant-like tendencies, that he's really good on his feet. He's good in front of crowds. And he's just really good at all that stuff. He's huge, too. He's a big guy, big energy.
That's right. He's over 6'4".
He's like 6'3".
6'3".
Something like that.
He doesn't see on TV. It's hard to tell how tall someone is unless you're like standing next to someone. But I keep forgetting that he is tall.
He's a big dude.
That makes sense then. That was tough. There we go.
This is hard to cut because this is where I made the expansion score. Like right before you put it in the oven, you do like one big slash so the bread can just like bloom out. So this is not really a fully formed crust the way that this is. So like the knife doesn't want to grab into it. It's all like smooshy because it's so fresh. That's nice.
No, that's interesting to hear. I've always kind of said like, Trump is he's like the king schmoozer.
Oh yeah.
And that's what, like, I've heard people criticize Trump, like, oh, I can't believe he said that. Like, I was like, no. He's just schmoozing. Like, he's, like, what they were saying, he told Americans to drink bleach. He didn't say that. If you listen to him, he's segueing the conversation, but in a schmoozy way.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy goes through all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, that sounds great. We got to find a way to put that in there and, kind of keep it moving. Like, he was just schmoozing on to the next topic. But that's how he talks. And they're like, he wants people to drink bleach. No, that is not what he's saying.
They just didn't get it.
They just didn't get it. And sometimes how he schmooze talks gets him in trouble like that, and people misinterpret it. But when I started listening to him in good faith, I started realizing, like, oh, that's kind of like how he talks. Now, he says some reckless stuff sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But and he's not beyond being criticized. But there are certain things that I think are misinterpreted what he says and how he means it. He doesn't even know what he's trying to say. He's just moving on to the next thing. But
It's all showbiz.
yeah.
That's the reason I brought it up, is because politics is just showbiz for ugly people. I can't remember where I heard that. That's not mine.
That reminds me of when people are like, AOC is hot. I'm like, compared to everybody else that's in Congress, I don't know. Like, but in general, she's okay. You're absolutely right. It's mostly ugly people there.
It is interesting, though, and it's important as an American to stay abreast, especially, again, as a father, have to educate your kids about the world that they're about to walk into. I feel like that was a big problem with the boomer transfer to millennials, is they were a little naive, thinking the world was just going to be as great for their kids as it was for them in the 50s after they were all being born after the war, into a world where, like, a man could afford to be six kids and a vacation house from being like a mechanic in certain parts of the country. It just was so much easier because of the meltdown of the family. It's just such a better use of energy than anything else that I've found. Like fighting wokeness, thinking about politics, while all that stuff is important, I really just am so happy to be back to being a family first guy. And it's even easier to be a family first guy when I work a regular job than as a musician, because, music, I do really love music a lot. Like, it's very, very important to me. It's a big part of my identity. And not being as close to it is kind of tough. I mean, we're in Music City, man.
Yes.
Thank goodness there's so much other type of work for me to do that I didn't lose everything by losing the orchestra. I lost a lot, and I lost my main source of income. But now that that's replaced, I would love to get motivated about doing projects that are more creative, and I have ideas again. After getting canceled, it just was years after of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? Well, my life is over as I know it. But then acceptance comes, and it's like, okay, that happened. Let's go. Like, I've got a lot of art left in me, I think. And one advantage of having kids young as I did, starting my family young, is, I'm going to have an empty house when I'm a relatively young guy. And that I have plenty of life left in the tank to pour into stuff that I love doing, like making fancy bread and hanging out.
Or you'll finally get to start really traveling the world again.
There you go. Like, maybe figure out a way that, my playing concerts has been a great way to lead myself around the world. There's plenty of music festivals that'll say, hey, if you want to come out for a week and, play a couple concerts and teach a few lessons, give a master class, then we'll put you up in this ski condo and you can chill, and it's great. It's so much fun. I miss all that. It's a very elitist, fancy profession, classical music. There's a lot of hobnobbing and
Yeah.
politics, and I do miss like being a player in that game. But life is long.
Yes.
Plenty of opportunities to explore. Like, I've thought about writing a book. I have so much admiration for you doing what it takes to actually finish it, like get all the way through it, to see an idea like that from the planning stage to the execution of it. That's a huge lift.
It takes a while.
And it takes so much energy and focus and
Yes.
determination.
It's the focus part. Especially, it was easy for me to do during the pandemic, but now that I have all this other stuff that's going on, I'm trying to work on the next book, which is strictly about fatherlessness, and I think it's really important. But it's hard for me to focus. So that's like the biggest hurdle for me is focusing on what I'm actually trying to write and executing it. But I'm really looking forward to it.
Nice.
We're coming near the end here, so I like to ask people, and you've sort of answered it, but I like to ask, are you optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I actually am. I'm by nature an optimistic guy. And I am still engaged in the battle against my own personal cynicism. That's how I know I'm an optimist, is because optimism is a state of mind. So it starts within, and there's something very personal about being optimistic about the future, because it's like you said earlier, if I can do this, if I can break a cycle, if I can leave my kids something better than I was given, and for a guy like me, that's hard because I'm extremely privileged. I had everything I possibly could have wanted as a child. So that I still believe that is possible is evidence of my optimism. On a grand scale, being optimistic is easy when I'm sitting here talking to a guy such as yourself. To like the little reminder, there are people out there that saw what you did. Most of them didn't, but guess what? A few of them did. Moves the needle. Those people have kids. Those people are active. Those people live in neighborhoods. Those people have friends and families and voices. So I have seen, one thing I saw during a woke takeover was that only a very small number of voices speaking out are needed to rip down the whole thing. Like 2 or 3 people in an organization of 150 can bring it all down. How many positive voices does it take to drown out 2 or 3 negative Nancys? Right. Not that many. So just get out there, practice talking, practice writing, practice tweeting. It's all good ways to dial in your focus. And that's the superpower, man. I struggle with the same thing, focusing in front of a computer, solving hard problems all day. It's an enormous challenge. Yeah. But I'm optimistic because I'm still fighting it. I'm still getting out of bed. I'm still going to the gym. I'm still popping out good bread. I'm still in great health, despite all of the horror. Because for a while I wasn't. It took a while to get it back. But yeah, if I think I can survive a lot, if I can survive what I survived.
That's excellent. Well, I'm optimistic about the future. I'm an optimist in general as well. My story, your story makes me optimistic about the future. That there are people who are wanting to make a change, or go back to what was normal, or what should be normal, and say the thing that appears unpopular at that moment, but it's the right thing to do. So I'm optimistic about the future. Like you said, I think it's going to be the next generation, hopefully, that starts to shift some things. I am worried about, I'm starting to sound old. I'm worried about what we're going to leave the next generation. I'm about to turn 40 this year, so I'm like, man, I'm crossing over that number.
It's a huge, for me, it was a huge moment in my life. Turning 40 was enormous. Yeah. Like Marcus Aurelius in Meditation says, if you have 40 years and a set of eyes, then you have seen everything. Like, you've lived it all. Nothing will be new after 40. It's just like a repeat of something you've already experienced. And I'm not taking that so literally, but there's a significance to 40 years.
Yeah.
And I wish you the best hitting it. It was an amazing moment for me. And I think it will be for you too.
Yeah. No, I've been feeling like I was 40 for a couple of years anyway. But, you know, I'm a little bit worried about what we're leaving in the future. But, like you said, it starts at home. So I'm not nearly as worried about my son. I think my son is smart enough to figure it out. I think he's prepared. And he'll always have me if he has any questions or or wants guidance or anything like that. But yeah, in general, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about the future. Everything goes like this: bad times, good times. It just, you know, Republican, Democrat. You know, we just go back and forth, and it has flows, and we have these issues. Some of them are great issues that are, you know, we got to deal with. Some of them are not the greatest of issues, and some of them are positive. Like it's like this. And I think human nature, not human nature, human history is just filled with stuff like that. So there are always going to be negatives, and there are always going to be positives. I just don't want us to lose sight of the positives. That's all.
Well put.
But thank you so much for bringing dinner. The bread is delicious. I'm not going to murder this probably later tonight.
Yeah, dude. Don't save it. It's not meant to be saved.
But thank you so much. It was great finally meeting you in person.
You too.
And yeah, we'll of course stay in touch.
Yeah. Have a good trip.